Personal Productivity with Dan Clarke.
The Azure and DevOps podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using the latest in .NET, Azure, AI, and DevOps. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. The show is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a full-service software architecture and engineering firm. Find them at www.clearmeasure.com. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. A quick announcement, I am hiring a software engineer at ClearMeasure, so if you think you might be interested, just go to clearmeasure.com and check out the careers page. And hey, I'd love to work with you. Our guest today on the show is Dan Clarke. And he is a seasoned software consultant and developer. He's received multiple Microsoft MVP awards. He's a founder of Everstack Ltd. And he's widely known for his contributions to the .NET ecosystem. And he hosts the Unhandled Exception Podcast. He has a background in DevOps and Azure and developer tooling. And he brings a thoughtful and system-level perspective to software craftsmanship. He's done a lot of work across education and community leadership. He's done content creation, blog posts, newsletters, YouTube tutorials, conference talks. We'll include these in the show notes. His blog, his YouTube channel. He's done lots of things, and he lives in the UK. And when he isn't programming, he enjoys daily weightlifting, playing the guitar, and a past life of skydiving and motorcycling. Well, Dan, welcome to the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you for having me on. It's a great honor to be on your podcast. And that was quite an intro, so thank you.
Well, you've done quite a lot. So there's a lot there. I want to kind of dig into some of the common topics. But before we get into it, for the listeners who have yet to go to danclarke.com, go back in the past. How did you get into programming, and what about it just captured your passion where you said, man, I love doing this?
I've been programming for, my dad used to bring back home the VIC-20 and the BBCs from his work. And so I just played around and he did bits of programming, just made little go-to-10 kind of things. But then, so I got into programming as a job. I went to college and did that kind of thing. But I think my passion started to grow through podcasts, funnily enough. So I started heavily getting into podcasts and listening to them. And I think hearing the passion that both the guests and the hosts had in listening to podcasts really kind of grew on me over time. And then I just started to hear about all these different technologies and programming languages and tools and stuff. And it just became fascinating for me. And that's kind of just over time it grew, where every day is different.
Yeah. Well, over the years, you've done a lot, but you have kind of shared so many tips and so many videos on your blog and your YouTube channel and your podcast that probably lump into the category of just productivity, how to be better, how to be more efficient. And we're all programmers, we're all slinging code, but we're all using the computer. But we also need to be organized and kind of figure out how we're going to do things. What was the genesis of that, where you kind of really got interested in just this general theme of, hey, how do we just be productive?
Yeah, I think so. I've actually been interested in productivity for quite a long time, and it's not just programming. It's I don't know what the right term is, like life management. I don't know. There's various different. It's not just programming, but I guess whilst I feel I have fundamentally a lot of common sense, I'm not super quick. I don't feel I'm super intelligent. I have quite a bad memory. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. But I think because of those things, over time, I've kind of and because I'm interested in productivity, I've kind of just built up lots of, I don't want to say tips and tricks, I guess, that have almost helped me leverage tooling and things to augment my productivity, I guess. And yeah, so it's kind of, I guess it falls into lots and lots of different categories. And I was kind of listing them out, whilst I kind of, in my head, I've got lots of different categories and areas of productivity that I know about and that I think about. I kind of listed them out earlier, and I kind of brought them down into 11, what's the right term? pillars, I guess, pillars of productivity.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think those would be quite an interesting thing to go through.
Well, you thought a lot about it. So okay, lay it on us. What are the 11? Or we probably can't get through all of them. But what do you think of? What are the most important aspects?
Well, we can try, but yeah, I guess this depends how productive we are. But so just speeding through them, like there's focus, note taking, to-do lists, checklists, time blocking, tools and automation. So obviously AI plays a lot into that as well now. Health, mindset, learning and improvement, goals, and lastly, of course, people. So obviously that's quite a long list, but I think altogether they actually they make a huge difference in how much you can get done and just your quality of life, I think.
Well, which ones are specifically focused on developers or have an outsized impact on developers?
All of them.
Okay.
Obviously, the first one, focus. That's a really big one because everyone gets so distracted nowadays. I think people are just used to. There's just so much going on in our lives, and also people just like you think about things like YouTube Shorts and like Twitter, X feeds where people just scroll, or Facebook, and people are used to these very short dopamine hits, which makes it very hard to focus for long periods of time. Where actually, if you can like get rid of all of that stuff out of your life and really learn to focus for a longer period of time and not be distracted by, oh, I've got to check my email every 5 minutes. You can turn off distractions and notifications and things and really have deep focus in what you're working in and work on one thing at a time. That's probably one of the biggest ones, to be honest.
Yeah. I just, I think I was listening to a professor at Harvard who was, I think, from the psychology department, who was just talking about that and challenging his students and everyone to do an experiment of practicing. He's talking about practicing boredom or getting rid of the smartphone and distractions, and even turning off music while driving, just to let the brain kind of go into deeper thought instead of just surface level pinging from one thing to another with constant distraction.
Yeah, it's funny how you say music as well, because one of the other things I do a lot, which helps my focus, is music. And like you can see, we've both got obviously the listeners listening to audio only can't see that we've both got big headphones on. But I find that just having quite big, all-encompassing headphones, even if I'm not listening to anything, that makes quite a difference to my focus. And there's also this is a paid for subscription, but there's a thing called Brain FM, and there's a few different things like that, and on Spotify as well. If you search for binaural beats, there's lots of stuff nowadays which really just the sounds are designed to kind of like work well with your brain to help you get into different brain states and help you with your focus. So I use Brain FM quite a lot. So there's no singing, like there's no vocals. It's just different, really relaxing music just to help you get in like focus states.
Nice. All right, I wrote that down. We'll include that in the show notes. Awesome. One of your pillars is note taking, right? Or how did you phrase it? Yeah,
just note taking. So things like, I'm sure a lot of listeners have heard of things like Notion and Obsidian and things. And even if you're like if you're taking notes at work, and you've say you've got the Microsoft stack or something, you've got like Loop now, which is quite good. So that's very similar to Notion. So the tool doesn't really matter. It could be just markdown files in Dropbox or something. But and I guess this ties into me saying earlier, I've not got a great memory, but most people haven't got photographic memories. But there's just so many things that if you get really good at note taking, rather than having to ask someone, how did you do that thing again, or whatever it was, if there was something you were working on. So another area of this, it's not another pillar, but it's still within note taking, is like code snippets. So I take a lot of code snippets. So if I've done something in the past, say as an example, maybe you're working on adding authorization identity to a website, ASP.NET or whatever it is. If you've done it before and you've taken notes and snippets and code snippets along the way and that kind of thing, then when you come to do it again, there's just no mental barrier. You just do it. You follow your own notes and snippets and checklists and that kind of thing. And you can do it in a fraction of the time because you've done it before. So you're not having to solve the same problem again.
Yeah. Well, I definitely struggle with that one because even back in schooling and university, I never was well, I take that back. I was a note taker, but then they went in the trash on the way out the door. I would write things down, but never review them. So I really love search, which maybe that's another way of note taking. That's a good one though.
Yeah, I think you can spend a lot of time. Like productivity can be a trap as well. When you get into it and start reading books and everything, you spend all your time learning about productivity rather than being productive. And the same happens with like note-taking systems. Like if you look on Reddit and like Notion kind of things where people have got all these dashboards and fancy systems.
Yeah.
You don't need any of that because, as you say, you can search. You can search to find what you want. Just getting it out of your head. So, sorry, excuse me. Getting it out of your head so that your head's free to have ideas, to actually do stuff, rather than having to remember. And this ties in with like all of these things: note-taking, to-dos, checklists, and everything. Like Dave Allen's book, Getting Things Done. The main concept is, as soon as you have an idea or you've got something, get it out of your head, so that you can be creative rather than having to just hold stuff. But yeah, that's a great book, Dave Allen's Getting Things Done.
That is something that I guess I stumbled on at some point. I haven't read the book, but getting it out of my head, because I forget things so much, and then, well, what's the use of having a thought? Because then it's gone.
Yeah, and even like on my phone, because I use TickTick for my to-do list, but there's things like Todoist, TickTick, there's lots of other ones. But say I'm walking to the gym, for example, and my mind's wandering, I'm thinking, and I get an idea, or there's something I remembered I need to do. I've got it so that I can very quickly add it to my TickTick inbox, and I keep that empty, so like that it's temporarily in my inbox until I get back to a computer and I can look through my inbox and categorize them, give it a due date, give it a priority. But being able to very, very quickly, even if I'm not at home on my computer, just get an idea out of my head or to do out of my head and into a system, and then I know I will not forget it. I think that's really key.
What's the next pillar?
Well, these aren't in any particular order, so given the time, let me have a look at... So I've kind of already said to-do lists, and that's really just not forgetting things, and that can be a whole episode. So let's say we've done that one. We've done focus. I suppose while we're talking about focus, the Pomodoro technique is probably worth pointing out.
My daughter's used the Pomodoro just in studying for classes in high school.
It's so powerful because just going back to this focus, it's a really nice length of time. And so for the listeners that actually haven't heard of this, basically you set a timer for 25 minutes and that's it. You focus on the thing you're working on for that 25 minutes. You can't check emails, notifications or anything, and you try and limit distractions. So just if you can, let people know that you're doing this so that they know not to interrupt you when you're halfway through a Pomodoro. And then at the end of that, you can have a 5 or 10 minute break and then restart again. So that 5 or 10 minute break means you can get away from your computer, you can reset a bit, and then you can start again. But because a Pomodoro is a fixed period of time and you've got a timer in front of you, when your mind wanders and wants to like do other things, then like, I must check my email. You can look at the time and say, I've only got to focus for 10 more minutes. That's what I've got left. So that's kind of like it just means, okay, I'll pull myself back to what I was doing. So that's quite powerful. And sometimes like setting it for other time lengths, sometimes I do it for 10 minutes. Occasionally I feel if I'm just a bit more distracted, 25 minutes feels an awful long time when it's not actually. And then I just set it to 10 minutes. And when I do that, I make sure that the timer doesn't go off, because quite often getting started is the hard thing. And then you set it for 10 minutes, you make sure it doesn't actually do an alarm. And the next thing you know, like half an hour's gone by and you've been really focused. So it's just like getting started. There's a lot of this.
Is there in your opinion, is there a time frame that's too long for a Pomodoro?
I would say a maximum would be 45 minutes. Because you need a break, especially if you're working behind a computer staring at a screen. But I don't think I've ever set a timer for 45 minutes. I think 25 minutes works really well. Sometimes, I guess another thing with this is don't feel you've got to stick with any of these rules and things. It's not a rule. You don't have to like stick to it from here for the next however many years. I think sometimes I find some techniques work for me. Sometimes I just I need to make tweaks. And I think that's what this thing is with productivity. It's about listening and feeding back, like to yourself and how you're responding to different techniques and adjusting them. So sometimes I don't do Pomodoro, and then I maybe after a while, like say a few weeks, I feel like, oh, I'm starting to get more distracted, so I'm going to give this a go, this tool a go, and then I start doing it again, and then it really helps me out. And then there's various other things, but it's just having this toolbox of different tips that work for you, and having self-awareness of when you're getting distracted and not being able to focus properly.
I think that's a big idea, the self-awareness of when I'm being distracted. And like Pomodoro, there's nothing magical about this weird word that somebody made up. I don't know who made it up, or this technique, but it's struggling with getting distracted. And I think we all, every piece of software out there is programmed to say, look at me. And so many people use Slack or Messenger apps or Teams or whatever happens to be your cell phone. And you actually have to click something to turn it off, or invariably it's going to go ping or pop up or do something, vibrate in your pocket. And we have to intentionally say, okay, I'm not going to allow myself to be distracted. I'm going to put away anything that would interrupt me so that I can give myself fully to something that I'm intentionally deciding to focus on. I think that's a big idea.
Definitely. So another one is time blocking, which I use quite heavily, and I find this makes a massive difference. And again, this is just being intentional and having self-awareness. Time blocking is basically where you, in your calendar, a lot of people put, like, if they've got a meeting, they'll put the meeting or an actual event, but they don't put anything else. So, and lots of times, maybe your meetings are scheduled by someone else anyway, so someone else is scheduling your time. But actually, people don't put in the calendars things like and focus time to work on whatever it is you're working on, family time, health, all of these kind of things. So I use a tool called Notion Calendar, which used to be called Cron. And it's basically a front end for Google Calendar. So you can still use Google Calendar, but it's like a GUI effectively. But it allows you to just, you can multi-select different events, you can drag and drop them together, you can resize them up and down. It's just a lot more powerful than the Google Calendar UI. But if you do time blocking, this is so powerful because you can just say you've planned out your day, and then what you're currently working on does happen to overrun a bit. I can just click everything else and drag it down all together. And it's just easy. Like you start moving stuff around. Because I think a lot of people who try time blocking fail because if they overrun or something happens, then they think, oh, time block is not for me or whatever. But actually, I do time blocking very heavily, and I'm always moving stuff around because things do overrun. The thing is, it's like with software development, we use this term observability, where you've got a live system, we can see what's going on in the system. Quite often with time management, people don't have observability over how they've spent the time, but also how they're planning to spend the time, where time blocking makes it a lot more intentional. And I find that when I do that, I just get a lot more done. So like, I'm sure a lot of people have felt they've got halfway through the day or to the end of the day and they've felt they've not achieved anything that day, where if you've time blocked that day, and you're following it, so you've been intentional about that time, then you don't tend to get that because you plan your day, so everything's been intentional. So you don't get to the end of the day and think, I've not achieved anything, because you've achieved what you planned, hopefully. But
yeah, and I can see different forces playing on managers versus individual contributors. Managers, all the time blocks are set because you're visiting with an outside party, with another person that's counting on that time, versus if your work is for you, where it's more rare that you have a meeting, you're just kind of plotting out your time so that by the time the day is done, you're happy with what happened, right?
Yeah, well, I guess the same principles apply. So if people have created meetings and you've got meetings, then those are in your calendar, because you can only do one thing at a time. So you can either do like if you've got an event in your calendar or you're actually doing something, but those can't happen at the same time. So whether you're in a meeting, whether you're doing focus time, whatever, I think that's the thing with everything that people do it's got one common denominator. It revolves around time, whether it's a to-do, whether it's working on a user story, whether it's fixing a bug, whether it's being in a meeting, whether it's watching TV, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's going for a walk. All of these things take up time. You can only really do one thing at a time. So just having just this linear map, and it also means that you can look at it and say, this is what I should be doing now. And I quite often find that if you put things in like, say you've got a meeting which you've got to prep for, and then you accept that invite or you've created the meeting, whatever, but at the same time, you block out time to prep for that meeting, whether it's the day before or whenever, then you know you're not caught off guard when you get to that meeting. Or if you've got a meeting which is in person, you've got to travel somewhere, by also blocking out the travel time, also blocking out getting ready beforehand, it gets rid of a lot of stress, I find, because I can look at my calendar and know that I've not forgotten anything because things on my to-do list that are high priority, they've gone from a to-do list into my calendar. So I know I'm not missing anything important. I'm doing what I should be doing right now. And everything's very intentional, which I think makes a big difference.
Right. So software engineers I think naturally they think about, what technology tools am I using, or what kind of automation am I using? What's your view on tools and automation?
Oh, I love it. This is going to take up the rest of the episode. But I think like just with tools and stuff, so where software developers IDs and things like I use Rider, being a .NET developer. I used to use Visual Studio a lot, but now I use JetBrains Rider. I spent quite a lot of time learning that tool, and so that I was really productive in it. And just knowing all the hotkeys and keyboard shortcuts to do refactoring and that kind of thing has made such a huge difference to how long it takes to get things done. And it's even like, I suppose as an example, a very simple refactor is Control-R, you rename everything. You want to rename a method or something throughout your code base, or you want to fix up namespaces. If you were to do that manually across a large code base, that might take a very long time, or you can take a second by just hitting a shortcut and doing it. Now, that's the simplest of refactorings. That's very simple. There's lots of much more powerful refactorings than that. But that's just an example of like learning one shortcut can save quite a bit of time for doing that one task. And there's just so much tooling out. Like, so just off the top of my head, LinkPad I use heavily. That saves me a lot of time for spiking stuff. That's really powerful. Like I use Rider. AI now as well. That's saving. Again, AI could be a whole topic, but using like GitHub Copilot or whichever AI like tool you want to use. Like we were talking about I mentioned danclarke.com, my blog earlier. So I've basically rewritten my personal websites using a static site generator called 11ty, and I do hate this term, but I vibe coded it, so I let GitHub Copilot do it all for me, and it's insane. It did it all. I basically told it each change I wanted to make. I just told it to do it, and it went off and did it, and it was pretty good. And so I'm really happy with the end result. And it's now gone live. I've replaced my old one with this, and it wouldn't be anything like it is now if it wasn't for the fact that I was leveraging AI to do a lot of the work. I never have to send it a div again. That's
nice. Well, let's dig into that, because I think that so many people are hearing of this and then they go to do it themselves, and then they realize, this code is crap and it doesn't even work. And so, all right, so you figured out a workflow where you replaced your own personal website with generated code, and so the mechanics. Now, you could have written every line of code yourself because you know how to do that, but you saved so much time on just the mechanics of getting all that code put together the way it needed to be. So talk about how you approached it. Was it like one big prompt? Was it a series of a gajillion prompts? How did that go?
So I would say it was a prompt per requirement. So I started off, so just to step back a bit for the listeners that haven't used it much, with things like GitHub Copilot and similar, you've got a concept of instruction files, which you can put in Git and source control, and that can describe what technologies you're using, what coding standards you want to use. And you're not using that, you're not writing one of those per prompt. You just put it in source control, that's your standards. So that's how you can guide AI to do how you want your code to be. And if it starts to do things that aren't what you want, then you can edit that instruction file and basically give it examples. So you can put code snippets in there and give it examples. So that's instruction files. And then you've got the prompts, which is your actual prompt. And you can just put it in a chat window like GitHub Copilot, or you can write markdown files, which are prompt files as well. And I personally quite like doing that because it means I can, by writing a markdown file, I'm naturally a bit more descriptive rather than just typing and iterating in a prompt. I try and give all the requirement up front. And then I can just run that in the chat window. And generally, it's been pretty good. Like I think each model that gets released seems to be dramatically better, and like now is so much better than 3 months ago versus 3 months before that. And it's just, yeah. And I think also with we mentioned my blog earlier, so I used to, like, less now, but I used to do a lot of blogging. But I feel that the skills I got from blogging, like learning to write and also just documentation as part of work and things, I feel I'm quite good at writing and articulating myself. And I feel that skill has actually really helped. Now AI is such a big thing because I feel I can articulate requirements within prompts and really explain what I want. So that's kind of been the flow, really. Just writing out the prompts, the requirements, trying to be as descriptive and add as much context as possible. And then just seeing what it produced. I think AI is very powerful for front-end stuff for websites. So I think just whatever it does, whatever it creates, if there's anything I want to tweak, I just tell it and then iterate against it. And yeah, it's just working really well.
Okay. Now, what technologies and languages did you end up going with? So you're inside Rider using Copilot, is that right?
Well, for the so I use Rider, but I also use VS Code as well. And for like non.NET stuff, I tend to use VS Code. So I use GitHub Copilot in VS Code. And when I use Rider, there's a GitHub. JetBrains have got their own AI stuff, AI assistant. Yeah. But there's a GitHub Copilot extension, so I use that in Rider as well. So I'm using the same GitHub Copilot account. And yeah, so I just like load that up. It's VS Code has got the GitHub Copilot already installed. So you just basically log into your GitHub account, and there's the free tier. I think as an MVP, I'm quite fortunate that we actually get more models. But I think you get like reasonable models anyway with the free tier, and you can literally just click a button, open up the GitHub Copilot chat window in the right-hand toolbar, and just chat, just like you would with ChatGPT, that kind of interface. You can just tell it in English what you want, and it is just so powerful.
So did you literally start with a empty directory, or did you lay down some structure first?
So for this actual website, about 6 months ago, it was actually whenever NDC London was, because I was doing it on the train on the way back on my laptop. I started writing the 11TY manually site, so I started it, and then life got in the way. So it kind of like I had a project and I had a starting point, and then once I started using AI more, then I just thought, I'll pick this up again, but try and use GitHub Copilot with it, and I did. Just for the listeners, if there's lots of background noise now, I've just heard that my wife and kids have just got home, and it's currently Halloween and half term, so they might start coming in, but hopefully they'll be as quiet as possible. So apologies for any background noise.
I think we're good. I didn't hear anything.
I heard the car pull up, so we probably will do soon.
Yeah.
So I already had that starting. I'd made a start on it before I started using AI on it, but I hadn't got too far. And that is then when AI really started accelerating and made it so that I could go live. And even things like I've had all my old website, I had all my blog posts as markdown files in Dropbox. I'd written this over engineered thing where I had all my blog posts in Dropbox. Every time I saved one of them, it would initiate a webhook, a Dropbox webhook, which would to one of my APIs, which would basically render that markdown to HTML into a database, which the website would use. And so it was kind of like, it was an interesting project, which I wrote years and years ago. I wrote a blog post about it actually, but I decided I just wanted to keep it simple. I wanted my website code and blog posts all in the same place, and it's just a static website. And one of the things I told GitHub Copilot to do was to take the blog post from my old site and port it across, update any references that like have to change, like the image paths, for example, what were slightly different. And I just told it to update that to match the new site. And then I went and did something else and I came back and it had done it. So that was quite powerful.
Okay, so you keep your blogs as just static content as opposed to a CMS or keeping them in a database, right?
Yes. Well, now it's static content. So I've got a GitHub repository. It is private because I want to be able to write blog posts in a feature branch and then it not be public. But yeah, just having it all in one place. But I don't have it I've never had the source of truth in a database. Like that system I described before, where it was markdown files in Dropbox, that was then served from a database because of that system I described. But the source of truth was always markdown files somewhere because, yeah, it's just markdown files are so nice to work with.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are hearing of vibe coding and of course it has so many definitions and no definition all at the same time. But some people are using it to mean, oh, something that's just, okay, I guess it works, but it's throwaway quality. Whereas this is your website. You're going to be maintaining this for a long time to come. For you personally, what's the line between, oh, this is good enough, and well, I'm really happy with this. I probably would have done that myself. Let me keep this code. And how much did you end up throwing away and tell Copilot, okay, try again?
Not much at all, really, because a lot of it is front-end stuff, which I'm not a front-end developer. So a lot of the CSS it was writing, I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. I wouldn't have been able to write that myself, to be honest. And it's not writing massive streams of code. It's quite clean code it's writing. But for when I use it for clients and things, obviously, I then go through every line with a fine tooth comb. But even with clients, it's like saves an awful lot of time. There's lots of typing. Yeah. And again, like I mentioned instruction files before, if it starts going off doing stuff that I wouldn't want it to do, then updating the instruction file so that future prompts don't make the same mistakes. You can, if you've got design patterns you use within a code base, put that in the instruction file, and then every prompt you do automatically adds that instruction file to the context. And you can have in the instruction files at the top, in the front matter, you can put in like wildcards of what file extensions that instruction file applies to. So you can choose whether it automatically gets applied to different prompts. So you've got lots of different control over those instruction files. But if you're not using them, I would definitely make sure you do start using them, because that's how you guide AI to do what you want. And if it does things you don't want to do, then tell it in these instruction files. And you can tell it to be, you want your code to be neat and succinct. You can tell it to write tests to ensure that there's test coverage. So you can just tell it all of this stuff. And those instructions get source controls. So as you iterate against them, you can see the history of it, just like everything else.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I've learned is if Copilot generates something that then I find I'm tempted to go and fix something or adjust something by typing, I pull back and I just consider it throwaway and try again. Just like if I'm going to talk to my iPhone and say, hey Siri, create a to-do item or create a calendar item for 12 noon. If it does it wrong, and I have to go in and modify that, well, that automation doesn't help me at all if I then have to go and manually tweak it. So that's kind of become my attitude with Copilot, and it's getting better and better every day. And
also, it's kind of like if you prompt it and then go and get a coffee and come back and it's done something you don't like, what have you lost? As in, you've kind of like, I wanted to go and get a coffee anyway, so it's been doing, or I'm working on something else while it's doing it. So it's much easier to have, if you spend hours and hours working something and you get to the end of it and you're not happy with it, you've got this mental thing of, well, I don't want to throw away all that work. But if Copilot's written a whole bunch of stuff and you're not happy with it, throw it away and give it another prompt or do it yourself, or you've not really lost anything. So, but it's interesting though, because I think with this vibe coding, there's you and I using doing vibe coding, so where we can review and we can, if it does something wrong, we know how to tell it. There's also Joe Blogs that's just had an idea that's not a programmer that knows nothing. Oh, I can tell some AIs to create apps and they can go live. And that's where we're going to see problems. We're going to see security issues because they don't understand what's been created. There's just going to be so many issues because the number of apps and websites and things, it's going to get out of hand, and there's going to be so much rubbish on the internet that looks good because AI created it, but it's just full of issues. So I think for the listeners,
we're already there. I think the internet already has so much rubbish.
I think it's going to get so much worse. I would say for the listeners that are worried about losing your job to AI, I would say that we're going to be hireable for quite a long time, fixing up the mess that AI has created. This has been created via AI by non-developers.
Right. Well, it'll open up. You're right. It'll open up the market to so many more people that now would not have created custom software, but now they decide to create something custom. And the best thing that happens is they're a startup company and it helps them, get customers and get moving. And now they're a company that grows and grows and grows. And then they realize, oh, we've graduated out of this little program that we figured out how to get working. And now we need a system for the next stage because they've been successful.
Yeah. And then we need to hire developers. So it's kind of, goes around.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think the issue is junior developers, because there's definitely, and it's already happening, where companies, for what we've just said, will need experienced developers to sort themselves out of the mess that they've made with AI or whatever. But then, and so they're going to hire experienced developers to help. Lots of stuff that junior developers do to actually initially start learning programming and get into it and learn. AI can do that now. So companies know that, and they're saying, well, they're not looking long term. They're looking, well, we just won't hire junior developers, which obviously isn't good, especially long term. And yeah, I think that's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, we'll sort it out. It'll be, I'm an optimist. I think, yes, like all these things are going to happen, but I think we'll sort it out. And I think the industry will keep trucking forward.
I think we'll sort it out, but that's easy to say as to experienced developers. But I think things are going to be tricky for junior developers. It will. Things will change. Things always do. But there's always bubbles. Is that the right word? And then I think there's going to be a bubble of lots of apps being created, and then security issues.
Yeah.
Where something's going to have to change. So that's going to be a big bubble. There's going to be an issue where junior developers aren't being hired, so then people aren't learning programming and software development, but also software development isn't just writing code, it's all the problem solving and investigations and debugging and things that come with it. So
and integration.
Yeah, all of this stuff. So I think there's definitely going to be issues, but there's going to be positives as well. But that happens to any change, like the internet, for example. There's negatives and positives. Yeah, I think all of these big changes just have, big pros and cons.
Absolutely. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, where would you drive the listeners to if they're interested in all 11 pillars of productivity that you've kind of pulled together? So
I've written a few blog posts listing probably most of them. Not recently, but whilst it explicitly doesn't explicitly say 11 pillars, it will cover all of this stuff. So I can send you a link which we can include in the show notes. But all of my articles and links to all my stuff are on danclarke.com. So that's got all the blog posts we've mentioned, a link to the podcast and the newsletter. So I do a monthly newsletter, which is news items from the past month. It's quite .NET biased, but it's also got AI stuff. So it's not just .NET. It's got various news items from the last month, things I've picked out. It's got information about the podcast. I do a monthly dev tip in there and a monthly comic pick. So it's a great way to keep up to date with our industry. So that's on danclarke.com. And then links to my Dome Train courses. So I've got that's Nick Chapsas's platform. So I've got a course on Kubernetes, one on Docker, one on JetBrains Rider. So again, the tips and tricks we spoke about earlier, I go a lot into those tips and tricks. And I've got a course on .NET Aspire, which it's recently rebranded now. They've just announced it a few days ago. So now it's just Aspire. It's not .NET Aspire, it's just Aspire. So
okay.
So I need to retitle that course. But so there's those 4 courses on there. And just all of my socials are on danclarke.com as well.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. We'll make sure to include all of that. And thanks for coming on the show and sharing with us everything that you've learned and put into practice with personal productivity. I appreciate it. And until next time, dear listener, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure and DevOps podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Visit our sponsor, ClearMeasure, at www.clearmeasure.com. And on behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.